What's up YouTube, Amanda here, and today we're going to be making a screen accurate Michael Myers knife prop from scratch. Sorta. Let's do this. Little disclaimer here, I did actually model the knife myself in the 3D modeling CAD software Fusion 360 and then 3D printed the parts on my 3D printer. Now I know what you're thinking, Amanda, I have no clue how to 3D model anything and I have no clue where to start. No worries, I'm going to be giving away these files completely for free. To download the files, the Thingiverse link is in the description below. Now you will need access to a fairly large 3D printer to print these parts. I printed this on my CR10S4 with no issues. There are several 3D printing services though online that will totally print this out for a small fee. Also, don't forget to check out local spots. There's a lot of local maker spaces out there now that will totally print this out for you. So yeah, definitely need a larger printer to print this out. Also, this last week, I finally reached 1,000 subscribers on my YouTube channel. I'm very excited about it, and because of that, I'm going to be doing a giveaway. I'm going to be giving away a complete DIY Michael Myers knife kit like this one. You'll get the 3D printed blade and the 2 handles. All you have to do is click the Gleam link in the description below. Also, you have to be a subscriber in order to win, so if you haven't hit that subscribe button already, go ahead and do so. Now that we got all of that out of the way, it's 3D printing time-lapse time. Go! So now that we got everything off the print bed, the first thing we need to do is remove these 3D printing supports right here. And I'm just going to use some pliers to do that. Now that we got rid of the supports, the next thing we need to do is just get rid of those fine 3D printing lines. And the way I'm going to do that is just by using some 100 grit sandpaper here, and then I'm going to go up to 220 grit. Just so we can blend in all those fine lines. Also, because this blade is so thin, the 3D printer actually can't create infill. So when you're sanding this edge down right here, there's a chance that it may split down the middle. That's totally fine. There's a very high chance of that happening. No worries. All you need to do is just take a little bit of this Loctite super glue and run a small bead down the line wherever it cracked and just glue it, let it dry, and then sand it down. After that, it should be good to go. Okay guys, I'm going to cheat real quick and use my belt sander just to get the job done a little quicker. All right, next up, 220 grit. Now that we've got everything sanded pretty well, I still see a couple of small little issues, and I do want to fill some of the gaps in this edge right here. And there's a few ways that we can do this. You can either use that gigantic tub of Bondo that you can get at like automotive stores, or you can use this Bondo spot glazing putty. Stuff's really good as well. The only bad thing about Bondo or this spot glazing putty is it's really toxic. The smell is awful. You really need to use it in like a well-ventilated area. So I've been actually exploring a different option that is way less toxic, and it's this Elmer's color change wood filler. So this stuff comes out purple, and then once it dries, it turns white, and once it dries, you can actually sand it down. I'm going to start by using this And if this doesn't do the trick, then I will go and use the spot glazing putty. As you can see, it's kind of a purplish hue, and then I'm just gonna dip my finger in here, just like that, and start filling in those small little imperfections. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and let everything dry. Once I see the purple turn to white, I know that it's sandable. So we'll go back and sand it again, but for now, we're just gonna let it dry. The wood filler is nice and cured, so time to do some more sanding. Now that we're done sanding all the wood filler, we're still not done filling all those 3D printing lines quite yet. The next step is to use this Rust-Oleum filler primer. And the trick with this stuff is to do it in very light coats. This stuff is a very thick primer, so the more you put on it, the longer it takes to dry. So definitely do smaller coats and sand in between. So I'm done with the first layer of filler primer. One thing I wanted to show you guys is the fact that I put this blue painter's tape right on the handle. You can't really see it because of the paint. But here and on the back of the handle, so when I glue these two handles onto the plastic here, it makes direct contact with the plastic versus paint. So it'll have a much better adhesion. I also still see a few small problem spots, so I'm gonna go in with this glazing putty and fix those. All right guys, so I've got the handles and the blade as smooth as I possibly can get it. So next up, it's time for paint. The trick with getting the blade to have that realistic chrome metal look, it's all in your first layer. You want your first couple layers to be as gloss black as possible. So to do that, I'm gonna be using this Krylon Fusion Gloss Black. This stuff is really good and it's very glossy. So I'm probably gonna do 1 or 2 coats of this to see how that turns out, and then we can go and start chroming the knife. So while the blade is drying, I'm gonna go ahead and paint the handles. For my base layer, I'm gonna be using this Wicked Colors Burnt Umber color. I'm gonna run it through my airbrush, and then after that, I'm gonna do some weathering with some of these oil paints. Now that we got our base layer done, the next thing I want to try to do is replicate that wood grain texture. And the way I'm going to do that is by using these water mixable oil paints. You can get these at pretty much any hobby store. This color here is burnt umber, so it's the same color as this. And I'm also going to mix in a little bit of this gray and just a dot of black. Just very, very little black, and then I'm going to mix it all with some water. Then I'm going to take a brush, just mix it all in. All right, next I'm just going to take some of this paint and dab it on, just like this. Does not have to be perfect, I'm just getting it all messy. I'm gonna let that sit for about a minute or so. All right, I think that's good enough. This is how I'm going to create the wood texture. I'm just going to get a clean shop towel or just a rag, whatever you want to use. And I'm going to wipe off all of this paint in one direction. So, let's see if I can get a close-up of this. All right. I'm not pressing too hard. I'm just lightly getting some of the paint off. Just like that. Now that I'm done painting the handles, the next thing I want to do is just go ahead and do a quick gloss clear coat on it. I think on the original lamson knives, the handles are pretty glossy. So I'm going to be using this Rust-Oleum Ultra Cover Gloss Clear just to seal it, because when I do the rivets as well, I need to actually tape it, and I don't want any of the paint to come off. So I'll be using some of this. All right, so the handles are clear coated. The next thing we need to do is paint on the rivets. And the way I'm gonna do that is by using actually this little 3/8 hole punch I got at the hobby shop, and by using some painter's tape. So you can see the little indentations where the rivets need to go. And so I'm just gonna take some painter's tape, peel some off, take my little 3/8 hole punch, pop a hole in it, and it is the perfect size hole for the rivets. I'm just going to line up where I see the little rivet indentations. Next, I'm going to take this metallic gold spray paint. Any metallic gold paint will work. Also, make sure you're spraying this in a well-ventilated area. I've got my garage door wide open, and I also have my airbrush purifiers. So, all right, I'm going to let that dry thoroughly before I start taking off any tape. All right, the paint has dried on both, so it's time to slowly remove the tape. All right, 2 successful handles. Looks so good. Awesome. Now there's a few ways to go about chroming the blade. The cheapest way is just by using your normal hardware store spray paint. Now this I actually got at the hobby store. This is Krylon Premium Metallic. It's a little more expensive, but it is a lot better than your cheap $3 paint can. So if your budget's tight, I definitely recommend this brand right here. Option number 2, which is a little more expensive, but a huge step up from just a regular spray paint. That's the Spaz spray right here. I actually really like this stuff. I used it on an H18 knife I was working on. Here it is right here. So as you can see, this is with that Spaz, and it's not perfect, but it definitely does the job, I think. The first prototype I was working on was this one, and I also used the Spaz paint. Now option number 3, which is the most expensive, but definitely the best in the 3 in my opinion, is this Alclad lacquer. So you get this stuff for about the same price as the Spaz, except this is literally half the size of the can. But this is definitely the best option in my opinion. This is what I'm going to be using for the video. But honestly, either one of these is going to be good. All right, just going to pour a little bit in. And I'm just going to do very light sweeps. I notice the lighter that you spray this paint, the chromer it looks. You just want to go really light. All right, I think I am happy with the way the chrome turned out. Here's a little comparison of the Spazstics paint. You can kind of see the difference. So the left right here is Spazstics and the right is the lacquer. I'm gonna buff this a little bit, so I'm gonna take a rag and just rub it down, kind of get that shine to really show. All right, guys, I think I'm gonna call the blade done. I definitely think the chroming turned out quite well. Now, I know people are gonna ask me, I'm not going to clear coat this at all, because if I clear coat it, it's gonna knock down that shine quite a bit. But if you really wanna clear coat it, I would definitely recommend the Alclad Lacquer clear coat. So we're almost finished with the knife. The next thing we need to do is go ahead and glue on the handles. So to glue on the handles, we need to take off this piece of tape right here. I'm gonna go ahead and scuff this up so the glue will bond to it. Also scuff the back of the handle up like this. Then I'm going to take some Loctite super glue, put a bead down the line here. I'm going to line up the handle. Then I'm going to take a clamp and just clamp the handle down. Just like that. All right, all dried. Time for the other side. Look at how good that looks though. All right, guys, we're almost done. I'm just gonna wipe down the knife with some water, clean it off. And that right there is a done knife.